The Las Vegas Raiders have officially wrapped up practice today as they get ready for the scrimmage coming up against the San Francisco 49ers. And today I want to talk about a couple of updates that are coming out of the Las Vegas Raiders practice. Plus, we got a new depth chart that has dropped. Doesn't have a lot of changes, but I want to kind of go over it. Does have a couple of updates. Let's start right away with a player who's kind of flashing a little bit for the Raiders. It's a guy who had a pretty damn good game against the Seattle Seahawks. And now this guy's getting first team snaps for the Las Vegas Raiders. Kyu Blu Kelly apparently got the call today at practice. Vincent Sonora is saying that multiple team periods in a Raiders practice today, it's been Kyu Blu Kelly getting the first team call at the perimeter cornerback spot opposite of Eric Stokes. Kelly has been steadily working his way up the depth chart. Now, Kyu Blu Kelly, truth be told, before that Seahawks game, was not a guy that I said could potentially start for the Raiders. And even right now, I'm not sure if he could start for the Raiders or if he'll even make this team, truth be told. We've had so many cornerbacks at this point rotate in for the Raiders at the cornerback position, right? If you guys just think back over the last 3 weeks, Jacorian Bennett, Sam Webb, JT Woods, Eric Stokes, Darian Porter, Kyu Blu Kelly, all of these guys have taken first team snaps. Now, today was the first time Kyu Blu Kelly specifically took first team snaps, and it could also be him being kind of rewarded for the game he did have against the Seahawks. He had two really nice plays against the Seahawks. One was a play in which the wide receiver ended up breaking towards the outside. This guy saw it, read it, reacted, looked like Jack Jones about to jump this play for a pick six. Looked like he kind of slipped a little bit, ended up not getting the pick six, but he did still break the pass up. He had another play in which the Seahawks tight end basically had a catch. Should have probably picked up the first down as well, but Kyu Blu Kelly came in there and he knocked the pass incomplete. Two really nice plays against the Seahawks, and maybe he's being rewarded a little bit, for the game he had against the Seahawks, or maybe the Raiders want to see what this guy can do with the first team unit. Kyu Blu Kelly's an interesting player because he was a 5th round pick just last season, ended up getting cut, and then at this point, he's been on multiple teams. And the team that he initially got cut from is pretty much, cornerback university, if there is one, of the NFL. The Baltimore Ravens ended up releasing Kyu Blu Kelly, right? They drafted him in the 5th round. They released him. They didn't have a roster spot for him. They may have wanted to potentially bring him back to the practice squad, but the Seahawks apparently jumped in and essentially claimed him. And I should say he was with the Ravens 2 years ago, not last year. So this was when Pete Carroll was still with the Seahawks, and the Seahawks claimed this guy. Now, obviously, he didn't stick with the Seahawks either, and he's basically been on 4 or 5 different teams. But he is here with the Raiders, and multiple teams have given him an opportunity, potentially because there's actually some upside with this guy, right? But here he is with the Raiders, getting some first team snaps. Some people have asked, if this guy's getting first team snaps and Darian Porter isn't necessarily locked in as a starting cornerback, is that because the Raiders might not trust Porter? Is that because maybe our cornerback position's weak or not in a good spot? I don't necessarily think that's the case. I watched every single one of the snaps by these corners. Darian Porter played 26 snaps. Cameron Richardson played 25. Eric Stokes played 20 snaps. JT Woods played 17, 18 snaps. I wouldn't say the Raiders cornerbacks are necessarily bad, but I also don't think any cornerback necessarily stood out more than anyone else. Darian Porter's speed stood out to me pretty much right away. Eric Stokes looked comfortable out there, right? He looked like, hey, I've been in the NFL for 4 years and I've had multiple years where I started. He looked like that savvy veteran, right? And truth be told, that wasn't really another guy really stood out, right? Outside of those two guys, and even Porter's really just his speed. Cameron Richardson to me didn't really look all that good. JT Woods also didn't look all that good. So I do understand if some people are concerned. I'm not really concerned going into this season. I do think Pete Carroll and Patrick Graham both know how to coach up cornerbacks. So I think Kyu Blu Kelly getting those opportunities, Cameron Richardson getting those opportunities, I think that's more so because of the fact that our coaching staff knows what they're doing with corners. So I think multiple cornerbacks at multiple points are kind of flashing, which is why the Raiders have rotated multiple guys in. Also, don't overlook this. Eric Stokes, when I watched his tape, he looked like a veteran to me, right? He looked like a guy that should be a starting cornerback. Pretty much for most of camp, Eric Stokes has been the Las Vegas Raiders starting corner. He's basically took most of the snaps. Anytime, Sam Webb took first team snaps, or anytime Cameron Richardson took first team snaps, anytime anyone outside of, Darian Porter took first team snaps, or any guy that ended up taking first team snaps, they really only came in for Darian Porter. So Eric Stokes has always been kind of locked in as a starter. And, even as we get into it, I'd be shocked if Darren Porter's not the Raiders starting corner. I think giving other guys opportunities just kind of makes sense. But I'm pretty sure Darren Porter's going to start for the Raiders. So I'm not really concerned at all that maybe the cornerbacks don't look good, which is why they're rotating so much guys. And I don't think that's the case. But I do like the fact Kyu Blu Kelly is getting an opportunity. I showed you guys that play where he almost had that interception against the Seahawks. Today in practice, he actually did have an interception against Aiden O'Connell. And he took it back the distance according to the reports. He was able to jump a play and basically take it back. Kyu Blu Kelly, Darian Porter, Cameron Richardson, whoever it is, I think the Raiders cornerback position will be in a good spot. But I do like the fact that this guy's getting those first team snaps. He's a talented football player. He just hasn't been able to stick with one team, but hopefully he's able to kind of make it happen with the Raiders. We have a couple more updates coming out. Jackson Powers-Johnson is back at practice with the first team at the right guard position specifically. Yesterday, Powers-Johnson had an injury. If you guys did not know, he had a rib injury. Did not practice, and it was, and I think Antonio Mafia, I think his first name is Antonio. Mafia ended up getting the first team snaps for the Raiders. Obviously, Alex Kappa is out for the Raiders at this point as well. And with JPJ missing time, Mafia ended up starting for the Raiders. But today, Jackson Powers-Johnson is back at the right guard position, which is a good sign. I think if, I think as that scrimmage happens against the 49ers, I think having Jackson Powers-Johnson out there is going to make a huge difference for the Raiders. The 49ers have a pretty good front seven, right? They have a defensive tackle they drafted out of Texas, Alfred Collins. He's a pretty solid football player. They have Nick Bosa, although I'm not sure if he's healthy, if he's practicing. I'm sure he is. But, they have some other guys as well. Fred Warner. They have a rookie. I think Nick Martin's his name. Third-round pick is a linebacker. He's been flashing, or at least those are the reports coming out of their camp. So I think for the Raiders to have success, they're going to go full speed out there against the 49ers in scrimmage. We might not see them practice or in that actual preseason game, right? We might not see the Raiders in that preseason game. But in the scrimmage, they're going to go full speed. So I hope the Raiders have, all their guys healthy, because I want to really see if this offense line's good enough in live competition. Again, 49ers might not play their starters in that preseason game, right? So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. Glad Jackson Powers-Johnson is back. We will monitor the rib injury, though, right? If he missed practice one day, is back pretty much the next. Did his ribs just magically heal, or is he still hurt, right? So it's something to just kind of keep an eye on. One other update from camp before we get into the depth chart. Devin White, man, had 2 interceptions today for the Las Vegas Raiders. Both interceptions came on Geno Smith. Now, again, it is practice, so it's not a huge deal that Geno Smith threw those 2 interceptions. But I love the fact that Devin White is the guy getting these interceptions for the Raiders. We talked about the Raiders starting linebackers. If you guys watched my video, I believe it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, I talked about Landon Roberts, and I said this guy sucked out there. He only played 4 snaps for the Raiders, and on those 4 snaps that he did play for the Raiders, the guy basically had 3 bad plays of the 4, right? And I felt like for the Raiders, maybe they're 4 bad plays, maybe, the next 4 will be good, but I felt like for the Raiders, the linebacker position, there's just too many guys. But I did feel like Devin White looked good out there for the Raiders. I felt like Jermaine Pratt looked really, really good as well. And then, of course, I also think that Jamal Adams was the best linebacker we had. And I feel like that's the 3 guys the Raiders should go into this season with, that you 3 are going to be our linebackers, right? And Devin White, I would even say, is probably the 3rd linebacker I'd use. But I also understand, if you're playing a heavy power-based team, maybe you swap out Devin White for Jamal Adams in nickel packages. And then on the other side of it, if you're playing a heavy outside zone team, maybe you swap out Jamal Adams for Devin White, right? So I do think those 3 guys make the most sense for the Raiders. Obviously, Devin White had a couple of interceptions today, so that's a good sign. Hopefully he's able to repeat that against Brock Purdy when the Raiders play the 49ers. Let's wrap it up, man. Let's talk a little bit about the depth chart. Obviously, there's not a whole lot that's happening at this point, right? A lot of these updates, we're at the point where we're kind of over these updates, right? We're now going into, there's actual tape out there. There's actual transactions kind of being happening. The Raiders are bringing players in, right? They signed Terrell Edmonds a couple days ago. They signed Marquise Callaway yesterday. Training camp updates don't matter as much today, right? But I still do think it's important to talk about the guys taking first team snaps, especially if they haven't in the past. And then at the same time, we get these depth charts kind of coming out. Now, there hasn't been a lot of movement with this, but the first depth chart that did come out, the Raiders did have Ja'Cory Bennett on the roster at that point, right? And now they don't. So we'll kind of just get into some of these updates. There's really there's really nothing surprising necessarily with the first team unit. Jax Powers-Johnson or Alex Kappa is still with the right guard position, says. I wish that the Raiders would put Jackson Powers-Johnson, with the or at the center position as well. But it seems like at this point, the Raiders don't want to put Powers-Johnson at the center position. And they're going to probably roll forward with Meredith at center. And then, of course, I think JPJ just wins out the right guard position. It is going to be interesting to kind of keep an eye on that. Now, another interesting thing is, so Thayer Munford is locked in as, like the second team right tackle. And Charles Grant, at the same time, is locked in as the second team left tackle. I'm going to be honest with you guys, man. I don't think Thayer Munford's going to make the Raiders roster this season. I'd actually be shocked. I don't think Dalton Wagner's all that good either. He's never really developed. He's in his third year. But Thayer Munford is definitely not a good football player, in my opinion. So I think for the Raiders, you got to figure out, are you okay with Colt Miller, DJ Glaze, and Charles Grant as your starting tackles? Or are you not, right? So I think that's something to kind of keep in mind. Another thing to kind of keep an eye on, Gottlieb Azidzi, I don't know how to say his name, Adzi, not 100% sure how you say his name, but he played for the Raiders. I think his number 72. I believe it was 72 was his number. He played for the Raiders at right guard, right after, essentially right after Jax Powers-Johnson got done playing. It was him that came in for the Raiders. And he looked pretty good, right? Like, he came in before Lockie Tassi. He played right guard. He looked pretty good to me, right? I felt like, he came in there. He looked comfortable. He was moving well. And I think he played maybe 15 to 20 snaps. And then Lockie Tassi eventually came in, and then he came out. I'll be honest with you guys, man. I actually do think he's going to end up making the roster potentially for the Raiders. Lockie Tassi doesn't count for as a roster spot, so he'll be with the Raiders regardless. I think there's a chance he ends up making the roster, or at least he'll be carried on the practice squad. Earlier today I was thinking about the Alex Kappa signing that the Raiders had. I think it was a terrible signing, truth be told. I think the Alex Kappa signing $11 million for 2 years, the guy's probably not going to start. And I don't even think he's better than Gottlieb or even Caleb Rogers, right? I think Caleb Rogers in the next 6 weeks will be just as good as Alex Kappa, right? I really do think that. And we paid him $11 million over the next 2 years. And truth be told, even the Landon Roberts signing was kind of a bad signing looking at our linebacking group at this point, right? But I just wanted to mention Gottlieb because he looked pretty good out there against the Seahawks. Another guy that obviously looked good, Ismail and then Ian Thomas. Both guys looked really good as well on tape. No surprise with Jacoby, Trey Tucker, and Dante Thornton. Of course, Jack Bech is behind Trey Tucker. I think they're going to run the same exact rule. The running back group is kind of interesting. Obviously we're not going to probably get any sort of movement at this point, but Chris Collier and Dylan Labe looked a lot better to me than Zamir White did. And White had a couple of carries. Mostert had 1 carry for 11 yards. It came on a 3rd and 20, so the defense was in prevent defense. But Chris Collier looked pretty good to me, right? He moved pretty well. Dylan Labe looked good as well out there. The running back cuts are going to be difficult, in my opinion. We'll see what ends up happening. Jafari Harvey did not play for the Raiders against the Seahawks, which is kind of interesting. Not sure why he did not get any snaps. I really wanted to watch this guy kind of play. We haven't gotten any updates of the D tackles. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, man. I think Tonka Hemingway should definitely be climbing definitely be climbing that depth chart. He's listed as a defensive end. Obviously, he's a D tackle. Not a whole lot of movement at all among any of these guys. We do have, we don't at this point have cornerback Ja'Cory Bennett anymore. So now you got Darnay Holmes, Darian Porter, Eric Stokes, Behind Porter, you got Cameron Richardson. Behind Eric Stokes, you have JT Woods. And then you have the slot guys right here. Although, I don't think Greedy Vance is really a slot guy. Same with Kyu Blu Kelly. We'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. And then, of course, Lonnie Johnson also ended up getting hurt. So that's a change where he's further behind on the depth chart. Isaiah Pola-Mao as your starting free safety. Chris Smith as your backup free safety. Jeremy Chin as your starting strong safety. And then Thomas Harper as your backup strong safety. Although I do think, Isaiah Pola-Mao is more so your backup strong safety. And then Chris Smith or Thomas Harper would end up playing free safety. But there you guys have it, right? There's the depth chart. There's not a whole lot of changes from last week to this week. Special teams is kind of what it is. Kick return, Trey Tucker. Punt return, Trey Tucker. Sincere McCormick. Ashton, jeanty. I want to see jeanty touch the ball a little bit in special teams, man. We'll see. We'll see if he gets that opportunity. Everybody's talking about that Travion Henderson carry that he had where he took it like 100 yards on the kick return. I want to see Ashton jeanty get more touches, man. Hopefully the Raiders feature him a little bit more in this next game that's kind of coming up. But again, there's not a whole lot of stuff that's kind of coming out at this point. We are at the point now where, we can kind of just look forward to the season, kind of coming up. Obviously, we'll have 2 more preseason games. Hopefully we get first team snaps, like a good 15 of them from our first team unit. A lot of people are not sold on the offensive line, and I understand why that's the case at this point. But I do hope that the Raiders give that offensive line like 15 snaps so we can actually analyze and see if it's a good unit or not. They had almost no push against the Seahawks. Our starting caliber players against backup players were kind of struggling out there, right? So hopefully the Raiders coaching staff allows the starters to have those reps against the 49ers. We'll see what ends up happening. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What are your guys' thoughts on some of the younger cornerbacks? Are you worried about that position? Let me know about the linebackers and some of the offensive linemen as well. Thumbs up, subscribe, drop a comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.